there's a whole class of British MPs, members of parliament, who are so upset that Biden is leaving Afghanistan, and they want to continue the occupation, right? And they're saying things like, well, we can't leave because this is abandoning not just the Afghans but the UK, right? Like as if the United Kingdom is some kind of victim because they can't occupy a country anymore. And this is very funny because instead of they don't just want to occupy Afghanistan, they want the United States to do it with them and for them because and so you have some MPs who've been getting up and giving these really pathetic speeches in Parliament. I'm going to play you one of them right now just so you can get an idea. It's really so cringy. Here you go.
Like many veterans, this last week has been one that has seen me struggle through anger and grief and rage, the feeling abandonment of not just a country, but the sacrifice that my friends made. I've been to funerals from Poole to Dunblane. I've watched good men go into the earth, taking with them a part of me and a part of all of us. And this week has torn open some of those wounds, left them raw, left us all hurting. And I know it's not just soldiers. I know aid workers and diplomats who feel the same. I know journalists who've been the witnesses to our country in its heroic effort to save people from the most horrific fates. I know that we've all been struggling. And if this recall has done one thing, let me tell you now, Mr. Speaker, it's achieved one thing already. I've spoken to the Health Secretary, who's already made a commitment to do more for veterans' mental health. Yeah. I was never prouder than when I was decorated by the 82nd Airborne after the capture of Musakala. It was a huge privilege to be recognised by such an extraordinary unit in combat. To see their Commander-in-Chief call into question the courage of men I fought with, to claim that they ran. It's shameful. Those who have never fought for the colours they fly should be careful about criticising those who have. Yeah. Because what we've done in these last few days is we've demonstrated that it's not armies that win wars. Armies can get tactical victories and operational victories that can hold a line. They can just about make room for peace, make room for people like us to talk, to compromise, to listen. It's nations that make war. Nations endure.
It's so cringy.
Nations mobilize and muster.
Shut the...
Nations determine and have patience. And here we've demonstrated, sadly, that we, the West, the United Kingdom, does not. Now, this is a harsh lesson for all of us. And if we're not careful, it could be a very, very difficult lesson for our allies. But it doesn't need to be. We can set out a vision, clearly articulated, for reinvigorating our European NATO partners.
Okay, I'm going to stop this because I can't take anymore. And I don't think there's anything that can, I don't think there's anything that can quite encapsulate my feelings as adequately as this tweet by Glenn Greenwald. What does Glenn say here? Take a look. He says, "Nothing surpasses the drama queen heights of British MPs standing up in Parliament to give melodramatic speeches about the glories and honors of war. And the more the UK shrinks in relevance and power, the more pathetic these pompous speeches become." That is just... It's so true. It's just... How cringy. Honestly, how cringy. Like, this this fucking man-child is just standing there glorifying war. Like he thinks that he occupied some country, some kind of like benevolent, noble effort. Go and fuck yourself, you imperialist swine. You piece of shit. Dude, my great-grandfather and my grandfather fought in World War I, World War II, and they fucking hated war, and they never talked about it. So the fact that this guy is coming here and glorifying it, I mean, just look at the disparity, right? Like he's not only arguing for that like as a politician, but also like as a veteran, right? Like he's so proud of this noble effort of occupying someone else's land for 20 years and then nothing to show for it except war crimes, right? He's talking about shame. You know what's shameful is British SAS executing unarmed Afghan men and then planting radios and weapons on their bodies to frame them as terrorists. That's fucking shameful. That is shame. You want to talk about the colors that they fly? That's shameful. That's a stain on Britain's flag, and there are many stains. And that's a stain on the uniform. But you're not talking about that. He's not concerned about the war crimes that are legitimately dishonorable, by like in the very meaning of the word. They bring dishonor and shame. He doesn't talk about that. No. The shame is the withdrawal. What an imperialist piece of shit. You are a disgrace. He thinks that invading other people is noble? What is he even talking about? Right? And then this is just 3 minutes and it's already unbearable. He goes on for a bit longer and he's talking about also like, again, the sight of someone wounded being brought to him and like he's talking about some casualty, an event that he witnessed. Yeah. And what about the people that were killed by NATO strikes, by drone strikes, who were maimed? You don't talk about them. That's weird, right? We just went through, the headlines, the stories that I showed you of the war crimes. This is a fraction. This is just what we know. During a 5-month period in the war in Afghanistan, there was a certain 5-month period where 90% of drone strikes were 90% of the casualties of kills in the drone strikes were not even the intended targets. You think British special forces killing unarmed men is honorable? No one's been prosecuted for that. So my point is that these people who are trying to warmonger and promote imperialism and occupation under the guise of humanitarian endeavors and who think that they are nation building, they not only have nothing to show for what they're claiming they did, right? They say, oh, we did X, Y, and Z and it was so good and it was, stopping this would be shameful. You got nothing to show for it. So even your bullshit narrative is just, it's in your head. It's not in reality. You don't have anything to show for it. You're full of it. And not to mention that you have to be so morally bankrupt to know everything that we know. We have the Afghan war logs, war diary that was published by WikiLeaks. We have the U.S. drone program exposed by Daniel Hale. There are so many things. The whole SAS war crimes, the British and Australian SAS video published by Four Corners, the BBC and Sunday Times did an investigation. Panorama also did an investigation. This is a fraction, and it's already so offensive. And when they talk about shame and they talk about the negative effect of withdrawal, they never seem to talk about the war crimes that they committed there. They talk about the invasion as if they did nothing but good. This is lunacy. No, the overwhelming majority of what you did is wrong. And I want to remind people of something, because I think people they've got into this mindset. They think that if you have a noble cause, that it makes it okay. And that if you succeed in that, it makes it even more okay. So like, for example, if, the NATO forces had completely defeated the Taliban and completely gotten rid of Al-Qaeda, that this makes it okay that they invaded Iraq or they invaded Afghanistan or wherever else the war on terror took them. No, it doesn't make it okay, because you have no right to invade that country in the first place. I don't care if you're going to give them all, suitcases full of gold and money. You have no right to go and invade their fucking country, because there are things like sovereignty. Do you understand? Only an imperialist, a colonizer, thinks that it's okay to go into another country and do what they want. Right? Because this is not an Afghan endeavor in Afghanistan. No, it's a British endeavor. It's a British invasion, an American invasion, a NATO invasion. It's not an Afghan will. Do you understand? So I don't care how noble you try to portray it. This is disgusting. And, the most people do not glorify war, and yet here we are with these sick drama queens, like almost on the verge of tears. Shut the fuck up. And here's another thing I wanna read from Glenn. Glenn says, if the honorable members of the UK right, this is so funny how they all always call each other honorable. The right honorable gentleman. So if the honorable members of the UK Parliament and other NATO allies are so enraged that the US pull out from Afghanistan, what is stopping them from sending their own militaries to go fight the Taliban and fix Afghanistan? All right? And then, of course, the Parliament holds Joe Biden in contempt. I think that was the Telegraph who had that headline. And then Glenn says underneath, Russia, during the first 6 months of Biden's presidency, received a presidential summit for Putin, won their key geostrategic goal, completion of pipeline to Germany. And the New York Times today says, with Afghan collapse, Moscow takes charge in Central Asia. So this is what we were talking about before, right? Where they're not just saying, oh, Afghanistan is going to become a terror hub. At the same time, it's also very good for China and Russia and so on, right? Okay, well, first of all, this is happening under Biden. What has also happened, as Glenn is mentioning, the completion of the pipeline. I think the United States has completely dropped trying to lobby Germany out of the Nord Stream 2, right? So this is the pipeline between Russia and Germany, and, you know, it would undercut Ukrainian gas and so forth. And, you know, the U.S. was very mad about this, and they wanted to sanction sanction German companies and so forth. They used to claim, you remember how Trump is serving Russia's interests, and yet all this has happened under Biden, and there's no mention of that, right? So this Russiagate bullshit. Anyway, that's another topic. I'm really disgusted by these British MPs who are standing in the Commons after Tony Blair lied in that very same chamber about Iraq. He lied about Afghanistan. He lied about the war on terror. They covered up torture, killings, extradition, rendition, and, you know, Guantanamo Bay is still open. You have all these war crimes by British SAS, Australian SAS, unpunished. No one has been punished. I think there's literally one British soldier who's been convicted of war crimes, Donald Payne. He killed Baha Musa in Iraq. Or he's at least the first. And given the fact that there are many war crimes, that is really not, indicative of a just and resolute system. Now, is it? So this is really a sickening sight. And it really shows you something that, we're in 2021. We know all of these things, all of these things about the war on terror and the war crimes. You can see once again how war is the unifying, imperialism and war are the unifying factors, right? So this Tom Dugan he's a Tory. Tony Blair, a Labour PM, started the war. There was consensus back then. There's consensus now. And so you can see how when it comes to imperialism, it comes to war, there's always bipartisan consensus, whether we're talking about Democrats and Republicans or Tories and Labour. They always find some magical way to unite on these issues, right? How weird. How weird. It's almost as if they're serving a common interest, right? It's almost as if they have a purpose as politicians to listen to corporations and people who make money from war. How weird, how odd, what a coincidence, right? What an extraordinary coincidence. What a crazy phenomenon. And yet people can't seem to wake up to that. You can even hear the Eton schoolboy like coming out of them like, we can't leave Afghanistan and our noble humanitarian endeavors. Occupying, plundering, pillaging, subjugating the natives and the locals. It's such an extraordinary, noble, benevolent endeavor, oh boy. How could the Americans abandon us?